some of the early detection of drug trafficking occurred when you cross by automobile from Mexico into the U.S. Every so often, they'll stop traffic and then put cars back to back so that you could not evade or get out of that. And then they'll bring a pack of a dog or whatever to, and then circulate the area.
Yeah.
And it was in a motorhome of all time that was going to Canada that they found that the seats and what have you were all packed, in this case with marijuana.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden they began to pay more attention to who's coming, rather than assume that these individuals are not likely to be drug trafficker.
And then that was in the late 80s that motorhome was found with the marijuana.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you start seeing articles in the newspaper with the pictures and so on.
Yeah.
Which regrettably, some of the stuff was done to point out, like, obviously they're not as perfect as they claim they are, type of thing, you know?
Yeah. Well, and there's this sort of, what'd you call it, like fascination, or this sort of sensationalism that kind of like arises around, like, Mennonite drug traffickers, or, Mennonites behaving badly, or, absolutely.
Well, and I can imagine, if you look at all the articles that are from the newspaper dealing with the Miss Chihuahua pageant and so on, because she did not fit that prototype. And to Mennonites, she did not either.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your knowledge of or interaction of the Miss Chihuahua in 1987, who was Mennonite.
Well, I was looking, like I said, at the newspaper in Juarez one morning having breakfast, and I find that there's a picture of all the state beauty pageant winners who are welcomed by the president in his official residence, and they're all attired in the dress that's peculiar to that particular state. Usually their own committees will dictate how you need to be dressed. And of course, each state's going to publish the picture of their winner. So here's the one in Juarez, and that's how I realized. And the pageant, incidentally, for Chihuahua had taken place in Juarez, not in Chihuahua City, because they rotate that. But nonetheless, that year was in Juarez. I think it was 85 or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'll be darned, let me look into it. So I went to the newspaper and found out all about that, and I called her up, and that's when I was asking her, and she was telling me she was a student in communication, and so she was totally atypical.
Yeah, for sure.
And when I mentioned to you that I asked her, well, why did you tell there's a direct quote here, but you said, I'm surprised that I won in spite of who I am.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I was the third place winner in Cuauhtemoc, so I was surprised I was able to jump from third place winner there to first place for the whole, to win the whole state pageant. In which, now you have a broader committee, so it doesn't have the biases that she thought existed there, or not she would be in a better position to know.
Yeah.
But, and she lived in the city of Cuauhtemoc as an urban dweller. There's an urban community of Mennonites, aside from ones in the surrounding camps, who then tend to be more modern dwellers. And for her, being a Mennonite was merely a religion.
Yeah.
Those were her words to me.
Yeah.
And then she told me about her trajectory, her family trajectory into that area from Russia to, I think it was Sweden, and then Mexico, or the southern part, and then up north.
Yeah.
So she was never part of that migration that came, from Russia to Canada and then over into Mexico.
But then from the outside, still kind of associated with that migration.
Oh, exactly.
Then,
the Mexican public did not make a distinction whatsoever. To them, she was one of the Mennonites that they had seen. Even when people saw them here, those are the Mennonites that come shopping here. Yeah. Who are going over to Cielo Vista, the mall.
Right, exactly.
But that was not I just found it so interesting how emblematic her victory was of how the state was looking at its own ethnic composition and how she came to embody the diversity that they would have. To the extent that they did not dress her up like a typical northern Mexican, the attire that they used, that it would be like Sonora or frankly, or Tamaulipas, there wouldn't be any much of a difference.
Yeah.
And you can see in some of the slides that I'll be glad to give you in the pageant, they do have people dress like that.
Yeah.
And then you have the Tarahumara's and you have the Conquistadores. All of them are in the pageant that represent who Chihuahua is, and we're very proud of this.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting, but again, also some Mennonites would not see that positively.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
They just said no dice.